All right, guys, for this quick video, you guys are going to be learning some new vocabulary words for our first unit. Now, I am going to be doing something a little bit different this time. Instead of you coming up with sentences, all you'll have to do is fill in the blank of each sentence. That way you can see a proper example of what that vocabulary word is being used in a sentence correctly. All right, let's go ahead and begin because we have quite a few words. For this first one, our definition is Pharaoh. Our vocabulary word is Pharaoh. And the definition of a Pharaoh, it is a ruler of ancient Egypt. Now, one of the cool things about pharaohs is that, especially back then, both female and male could ascend the throne. They could become king or queen of ancient Egypt. Whereas in a lot of other civilizations back then, they didn't give women that opportunity. And a lot of these pharaohs were also seen as living gods. They believed that they could do no wrong. Just like when we talked about Mesopotamia, if a pharaoh told you to do something, you were expected to do it. Now, just like before, all you'll have to do is find two pictures of a pharaoh. You guys can pick and choose which one you want. Just make sure that you include two of them. Now, for this example, I will give you the word. That you guys need to fill in for that blank. So in this case, pharaohs in ancient Egypt were believed to be living gods. They were the most important person in Egypt. So that is what you'll need to do. All you got to do is fill in the word with the correct vocabulary word, and that will be your example sentence. All right, here's our next one. Pyramids. Our next vocabulary word are pyramids. So the definition reads, a pyramid is a massive monumental tomb for pharaohs. I may have mentioned this already, but a pyramid was a giant tomb where the pharaohs were buried once they died. And for many of these pharaohs, it took many decades for them to build their tomb. Many of them, once they became pharaoh, already had plans of starting to build their own pyramid. For many pharaohs, these pyramids were seen as a way to show off their money, show off their wealth. It was seen as a massive flex. The bigger the pyramid typically meant that you had more money and you were more powerful, because these pharaohs, like most kings, have a very big ego and they want to be remembered for, in many cases, forever, for thousands of generations. All right, just like the last one, make sure you find two images and add them to the slide, and also fill in the blank on the example sentences. All right, guys, next one, mummification. Our next vocabulary word is mummification. Most of us are familiar with mummies, right? But we don't really understand the process in how to make a mummy. So our definition is, it is a practice used by the Egyptians to dry a dead body to prevent rotting. So one thing that mummies are known for, they are not skeletons. So you're not going to see the bones. The skin is still attached to the mummy. The biggest thing that the Egyptians have done, they have removed any moisture or any water so that it becomes, in essence, a giant raisin. That's why they look super dried up, is because during the mummification process, they have removed all the water from the body. So for this one, just like before, find two images and make sure, be mindful, full disclaimer, some pictures are a little squeamish or a little, I don't want to say graphic, but they do, people, when you look up mummification or mummies, you're going to see some raisins for humans. All right, make sure you fill in the blank down below. So it's ancient Egyptians believed in blank or preserving the body for the afterlife because they believed their body went with them. All right, next one is probably one of my favorite pharaohs to talk about, and his name is Ramses II, aka Ramses the Great. And what Ramses is known for, he is known for being one of Egypt's longest lasting rulers. It is believed that he actually died in his 90s, which today seems really old, but back then it was pretty much unheard of. Most people ended up dying usually in their 40s, maybe even their 50s. But for him to have lived into his 90s, it allowed for him to grow his wealth and grow his power. And he's also known, or he's believed to have been the pharaoh that was around during the telling of Noah and his story, or not Noah, excuse me, Moses and the freeing of the slaves of Egypt. He's mentioned in that they believe that that is the Pharaoh that they are talking about. Make sure, just like before, look up images, add pictures of him, and then answer the blank at the bottom. So it's blank was known as a great power and powerful pharaoh. He was believed to have lived to the age of 90. That's Ramses II. All right, our next word is blacklands. So the definition for blacklands are fertile lands near the Nile River. One of the things we're going to look at just like in Mesopotamia, how important the Nile River was to the people of Egypt. Remember, Egypt is a giant desert. It's very hot. It does not rain very often. And because of that, they rely on the river to provide rich soil for them to grow crops on. For this one, find me pictures of fertile soil within ancient Egypt or even modern day Egypt, because it's still used to this day. And our example sentence: most people in ancient Egypt lived near or on the blank because of the fertile soil. Our next definition, our next word is redlands. And the redlands are found on both sides of the Nile River. And these were called redlands because they were uninhabited and made up of deserts. So it was very hot. You get little to no growth of plants. It's very hard terrain. And most people, and most of Egypt, is made up of these redlands. And then here's our definition, or our word example: the blank were lands that surround Egypt and were made up of deserts. Our next definition is sarcophagus. The definition is a stone coffin adorned with sculptures or inscriptions. So whenever they buried a pharaoh, they would inscribe spells, incantations onto the sarcophagus using hieroglyphics, images that mean words. And a lot of times they also had curses on there to prevent people from stealing or breaking into their coffins. Most of the time they were super heavy. Some of them, as you'll see when you look these up, were very heavily or detailed. They had gold on them, jewels, and so forth. All right, our example sentence here: the pharaoh's blank was very beautiful and had many inscriptions. Be sure to fill in that blank. Next one, we have the Nile River. And the definition is the world's longest river and flows northward through East Africa into the Mediterranean Sea. And it's because of this river that the ancient Egyptians were able to thrive. Just like in Mesopotamia with the Tigris and the Euphrates, if the Nile River wasn't around, Egypt, or the pyramids as we know them, would not be here. So it was very, very important for them. Now, the Nile River happens to be the longest river in the world, and it is roughly over 4,000 feet long. All right, I believe this is our last one. So our next, second to last one, we have canopic jars. And a canopic jar are jars that were meant to contain the organs that were removed during the mummification process. Now, the reason why they removed the organs and put them in these jars is they believe that in the afterlife, the dead pharaohs would need those organs with them. So they made sure to place them in those jars. A lot of these jars, each one of these jars had a specific head of a god and had a specific purpose, which you will learn about later on as we continue through this lesson. All right, here's our example sentence that I need you to fill in the blank for. During mummification, blank were used to carry the organs of deceased pharaohs. All right, and our last one is dynasty. And I'm not talking about the 1980s show. A dynasty is a series of rulers from the same family. So for a lot of pharaohs, if a pharaoh came into power, it was typically because one of his parents had been a pharaoh. It was one of those things that they always try and keep the family line going. So that, if a son died, they would always have someone else in that family to try and keep all that power under one another. Today, when we think of a dynasty, we can think of the Queen of England, right? Her family has ruled England for many generations. That would be considered a dynasty. The example sentence for this one It says many famous pharaohs came from a blank of rulers who kept power within their family. So this is what so those are all our 12 vocabulary words for this unit. Be sure to fill in the blank and be sure to give me 2 pictures for every vocabulary word, and then make sure that you turn in and submit once you are finished. All right, guys, if you have any questions, we'll talk about this on Wednesday when I get back. Thank you.